Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. Hour 2 of today's program, and we are continuing our discussion of this executive order that Trump signed on Monday. I talked about it very briefly, not the specifics of it on Monday, just a couple of high-level thoughts about what's going on when it comes to pharmaceutical prescription drug prices in this country and how Trump's approaching it. We kind of went through some of that in the last hour. We ended by talking about price controls, which I am 100% against price controls. The question is that what this particular executive order does? It does not technically control the price. What it's controlling, what it seeks to control, is that whatever the price is charged uniformly to the United States as it would charge as these pharmaceutical companies would charge other countries. That's what this is seeking to do. And from a common sense perspective, that makes perfect sense. Now, should the president be involved in this? Listen, I mean, with the setup that we have in our country today, and the way that things work, and the way that the American taxpayer, the American citizen, has been basically abused by all sorts of people, by our own government, by big business in this case, and there's examples like this. That's why you need competition, as we talked about last hour, because it's the only thing that creates downward pressure on pricing, right? Competition. If you've got other folks who can deliver a product, a service, a good that's less expensive, that's going to impact who people buy it from. And the problem is, if it's a new drug and there's a patent on it or whatever, for a period of time, there can't be a knockoff drug. So you go through all this, and a company we'll go through this, but a company puts all of this research and development into a drug, and I don't want to take that away. The left wants to take that away. The left wants to control what these companies can do as far as setting the prices and all that sort of stuff. That's not what this order is doing. This order is saying, look, you can price it as you think it needs to be priced. But this idea that the United States is going to be paying significantly more for the drug, we're not down with that. And, since the United States is paying for a lot of this stuff, it becomes a customer at some point. This is far different than just arbitrarily saying you can charge X amount of dollars for a particular drug. That's not what this is, although it still raises interesting questions, and we've got to be careful here. We don't want the government stepping out of bounds, but we also want to pursue policies that are consistent, or that are good for the American people and are consistent with the law and our Constitution. And maybe the law needs to be changed. Who knows? I don't know. But that's what we're going to tackle here today. And I've got more sound bites and everything else. I've also got Jake Tapper, who's written a book about Biden. Suddenly, he wants us to know everything that was going on in the White House, all the people that kind of hid Biden's condition from the American people. Tapper acts as though he wasn't one of those people when he clearly had no curiosity whatsoever, and he certainly provided cover for the Biden administration as well. I hope to get to that today, but I do want to talk about this executive order some more, because there's some critically important things that we need to get to, and we don't want to be people who say, hey, our guy's in favor of it, let's support it, right? That's not the case at all. We want to be principled. We want to be supporting ideas that are good, consistent with the Constitution, with liberty, with the law, and then maybe change the law potentially if necessary. But we don't want to be people who just say, okay, suddenly I'm in favor of price controls because our guy's in office. That's, by the way, not what's happening here. But some people, I think, wouldn't care if it was technically that, because they just are interested in supporting their guy, their candidate, their party, no matter what. I'm not a fan of that. I think that's very dangerous, to be quite honest. Anyway, before we get too much further, friends, if you're in sales, let me ask you this. Are you where you want to be today? Whether you're struggling to close deals, whether you are doing well but can see the potential to do a little bit better, or maybe you're doing fantastically well, but you think that it's possible for you to even do better or even get a promotion. Who knows? Maybe VP. Who knows where you could go? Whatever your circumstances, Matt Easton and Easton University can help you. They have a training system, a sales training system and coaching system that is, I think, as good as you'll find. I've been around this stuff a long time, dating myself back to the days and the methods of the great Zig Ziglar. But Matt's system is very good. It's very comprehensive. There's lots of videos and quizzes and training. And on top of that, it's not just the canned training. They've got coaching calls, 2 coaching calls a week where you can jump on with Matt and ask him questions with other people who are also trying to improve their selling skills. He has a phenomenal system. I think it's as good as anything I've seen. So, if you follow the system, it'll pay off, but you have to take the first step. That first step is visiting toddhuffshow.com/Easton. You can claim your one-on-one call with Matt. By the way, I should mention that if you sign up through our website, you'll get a welcome call with Matt where he will take the time to walk you through your specific sales challenges and get you on track as quickly as possible. So, toddhuffshow.com/Easton. toddhuffshow.com/Easton. Do not let this opportunity pass you by. Invest in yourself, my friends. It will pay off if you follow this system. So, let's get back here to this executive order that Trump signed a couple of days ago. And let's pick up talking about fixed prices. Now, this is not a traditional price-fixing executive order. In fact, price controls, as they're traditionally understood, involve the government setting a fixed price or some sort of a maximum price for something, a product, service, product typically, but whatever it is. And they often do that arbitrarily without looking at the market conditions. And even if they do, it's a bunch of bureaucrats trying to understand market conditions, and they simply have no idea what they're talking about. So this particular executive order ties U.S. drug prices to the lowest prices paid by other developed, that's a key word, other developed nations. Trump's even said in his comments, he's not talking about third world countries. He said, look, I understand if there's other places that can get lower prices because they simply have no way of affording the drug. I'm not trying to do that. I'm simply saying the days of the United States paying multiple times for these drugs, they have to end. This has to stop. So, when price controls are in place, traditional price controls, those prices are static as opposed to dynamic. Dynamic, of course, is like free market, right? Supply and demand. Other factors. You can change your prices in a free market setup situation. You can't do that in a government-controlled price-setting environment. They set the price. That's what it is. Them's the deals, and that's what the environment's going to be. That's how you're going to operate. It's static. It's unchanging. But see, with this executive order, the pricing is dynamic. It's something that adjusts based on prices with other countries. So if prices abroad change, the U.S. prices would also change, could also shift accordingly. So that's how this is set up. No one's telling the drug makers what they can charge. What they're saying is you can't treat the United States of America as the cash cow in this environment, especially something like that's in the healthcare space, medication, because this is, again, something that the government regulates to some degree. Take it or leave it. That's the position and argument here. So the executive order is also designed, the way that Trump frames it, and the way that I think he's genuinely looking to do this, he's trying to ensure fairness and you could say parity in the pricing of drugs. And this idea that there won't be any more foreign free riding on the United States of America's coattails. That's where other nations are benefiting from lower priced drugs because we've paid more. That's what Trump is trying to do. A traditional price control would be not where there's this freedom of the drug manufacturers to price their drugs. It would be something where the government directly intervenes in the market to regulate prices. That, by the way, can discourage innovation, right? That can discourage new people from coming into the space because they think there's no money to be made there. These are the sorts of price controls turn companies off. This is not controlling the price so much as it is controlling the ability of these nations to charge us significantly more. That's what this boils down to. Now, the other thing is it targets drugs primarily purchased through Medicare and Medicaid, which now you're getting into a situation where this becomes more justifiable because the government, again, whatever you think of Medicare and Medicaid, with which I have problems with this stuff on some level. I'm not saying completely. I'm just saying the government's gotten way too big for its britches. And these are very, very expensive programs. In fact, if you look at the cost of entitlement programs, I know at one point, and I don't know if the numbers are still this, but at one point it was approximately 2/3 to maybe 70% of all spending was done through forms of entitlement, which includes Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Doesn't mean that, we're trying to eliminate or whatever. It's just to say that it's a huge portion of spending. And so the group spending the money, ultimately, in this case, the United States, should at least be able to negotiate. And what's wrong on that level with using this approach to say, we're not going to be ramrodded here. You're not going to charge us multiple factors more for this drug than you're charging other people. So these are not price controls. Now, it's the government trying to intervene in what they're being charged, but it's what we're being charged in relation to what other people are being charged. Why are you sticking it to us? Surely we can all understand this. If you went and ordered a pizza at the local restaurant and you walked in there and they said, "Oh, Mr. Huff, you're paying $50 for your pizza," and you see somebody else come in who ordered the same thing and they pay $29.99 or whatever it is today for a pizza. We all understand that, wait a minute, why am I being charged more, right? Well, because Mr. Huff, you've got whatever. You have more money in the bank, which isn't true, but you got more money in the bank, so we can charge you more. But there's something fundamentally that we don't like about that clearly, especially when the government is involved, especially through Medicare and Medicaid, through paying for this stuff, they should be able to at least, it's understandable why Trump's taking these decisions or making these decisions and taking this position. So when you look at conservative viewpoint perspective of this policy, there's some pros and some potential cons here. So first, when you look at the policy, the reasons conservatives might support this is that it emphasizes fairness in economic policies. It ensures fairness. And that's something, I don't like the word fairness. I prefer the word just. In fact, I tell my kids that when they say, Dad, that's not fair, I say, that's a 4-letter F word. And I don't like that 4-letter F word. But at the same time, I also understand the concept here, which is we're being basically charged here, in this case, unfairly to bear the burden of delivering a drug to other people that aren't in our nation. Again, this runs contrary to America First, right? We're putting more burden on the U.S. taxpayer and on the U.S. consumer to pay for these drugs. And that is something that I think conservatives at least would generally get behind. You know, when we elect a government, it should be looking out for our interests. This is clearly something that doesn't compute and that doesn't make sense. Certainly, the government can't do whatever it wants to try to rectify it, but at least we can understand that it's a problem and that it needs to be at least realized, discussed, and tried to attempted to be solved here. This also reduces government spending because, again, if you're lowering drug prices and those drug prices are funded by Medicare and Medicaid, at least in part, that's going to reduce the taxpayer burden, which is something that as a conservative, we should all seek to accomplish. And it's also, which I've hit several times, but just to say it again, it's a market-based approach. It's not true price fixing. It ties U.S. drug prices to international prices and benchmarks rather than some arbitrary government-controlled amount that says we're only going to pay this for that drug, right? That's how this is set up. Now, what are some possible concerns about this? Concerns that I have, by the way. Those things that I just laid out, those are things that I think those all make sense to me. I can see where Trump's coming from. It's consistent with conservative thought. I don't like price controls, but again, it's not price controls. It's just trying to get to a reasonable common sense approach that says you can't charge us here in this country so much more than everybody else. How does that make sense? But there are still concerns about this, including first and foremost, just the overreach of our government. Do we really want the federal authority to be intervening in the free market like this? Is it the job of the government to demand or mandate, in this case, parity in pricing with other nations? Is that something that is defensible, or is that something that violates some conservative principles? Because the government is effectively interfering with private sector pricing decisions, at least from one vantage point. You know, again, I just keep coming back, even when I say these words, I keep coming to the conclusion that they can set the price at whatever they want. That's not the issue, or whatever they need it to be. The issue is that they're sticking it to the United States. And if they want to charge everybody more, now you can say, well, they can choose who to give discounts to. Okay, well, but as a purchaser for Medicaid and Medicare, should we not speak up about that? Is that not the biggest customer or one of the biggest customers? Why wouldn't we get volume discounts, at least through Medicare and Medicaid? There's questions that I have that I think that's absolutely legitimate for the executive branch to try to negotiate, if nothing else. But should it be an executive order? I'll leave that to you to decide. Not only that, is it a slippery slope? The other thing is innovation. Does this impact innovation? Innovation is important. I'm under no illusion. Research and development costs are legitimate. They're real. The cost of getting a drug approved in the United States is a real expensive proposition and endeavor. And we have to give companies in a free market the ability to do that, to have enough funds to continue that. But again, we're not saying you can't charge us a certain amount. We're saying you can't charge us dramatically more than everybody else. That, to me, I keep coming back to that. That's a totally legitimate position to have. So, those are the questions. That's kind of the thought process. I'm going to leave it at that. I've got some other things. I really want to get to this Jake Tapper. Actually, you know what? I'm going to play one other clip here. Dr. Marty McCary took to the podium with Trump on Monday to talk about how we've been getting ripped off. And I just want to, this is after Trump signed the executive order. He steps up. This is what he has to say.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the many doctors I've talked to about this very issue, thank you for taking the bull by the horns. Presidents on both sides of the aisle have talked about this and floated it and said they've wanted to do it. So you've had the courage to do it. Thank you. I've been a surgical oncologist at Johns Hopkins for 22 years, and I have seen patients suffer. We didn't take an oath to heal patients and then watch their life get ruined financially with their home, mortgage, retirement, going down the drain with GoFundMe campaigns, raising money from church communities and synagogues and friends they haven't seen in 20 years to try to raise money for what? For a system where Americans have been getting ripped off by 10, 12, 15 times higher prices than we see in other countries. The fundamental problem in healthcare is that we've had non-competitive markets. And we can do little things around the edges, or we can transform those markets to competitive markets. And that's what this executive order does today. Imagine buying a Ford for $175,000, a regular car, and then hearing that people in London are buying it for $10,000 every day, all day long. That is the craziness of this system. We're going to do everything we can at the FDA to support this executive order. It's transformative. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay, so again, it's interesting because it's not, these markets are not truly free and competitive as it is. And if you're going to look for certain protections, which I understand, things regarding patents and being able to do research and development, totally understand that. You also have to keep in mind the consumer, and especially when there's not competitive forces. This is a little bit more nuanced and complicated than some on the left or people out there today criticizing some conservatives. And there's legitimate criticism for people who just jumped on board with this. I understand where this is coming from, where Trump's coming from on this. Something has to be addressed. This is a problem. A lot of this is common sense to me, and I'm on board in general, but I'm out of time here is really what it comes down to. So, going to move on to something else after the break, my friends. Sit tight. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I want to switch gears here. I want to talk now about Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper, CNN. State of the Union. Is that what his program's called? I think it is. I don't know. But he has written a book with someone else. The book is about Biden's term in office and how the Biden administration effectively hid the condition of Joseph Robinette bribery from the media and by extension the American people, which I think at best is a revisionist version of history. Folks, listen, I have said this before. I said this probably, it was this week. It might have been yesterday or the day before. I said on this program, because I was talking about the 51 intelligence experts, right? National security intelligence experts, specialists that said that the Hunter Biden laptop story in October of 2020 was Russian propaganda. Remember this? But they didn't technically say that. They wanted a caveat out of it so they could deny it in the future. They said it had all the hallmarks. They couldn't say for certain, but that's what this was. They couldn't say with definitive 100% certainty, but they could basically tell voters, don't pay attention to it. Don't be sharing it on social media. Social media companies use the letter as a kind of a justification for keeping people from seeing that shared across their platforms because it was Russian disinformation, they said. Except it wasn't Russian disinformation. And I said on this program recently, and I will say it again in this context here with Jake Tapper, but how does a guy like me, and I'm just using myself because I can speak for myself. I would say the same for you because you knew the same things that I knew, by and large, most of you anyway. How could a bunch of hayseed hick hillbillies from flyover country, unsophisticated dupes who didn't, toe the line with the liberal narrative, folks who are part of the problem as far as just not doing what the Democrats want us to do and all that sort of stuff. How could those of us who are idiots in the eyes of the left figure out that the Hunter Biden laptop was not Russian disinformation? How does some guy with a microphone who started podcasting in his closet 10 years ago, yours truly, how did I know this and the 51 intelligence experts not know it? Of course, the answer is they did know. They knew that they were feeding us all a line of bunk. They knew that then with the Hunter Biden laptop story, and they know it now when they're peddling their stupid, pathetic, just jokes of books talking about what went wrong inside the Biden administration as it pertained to Biden's cognitive abilities. They're acting as though that's seriously something they did not know about. You could go back to this program. You could go back to your own memory banks with what you experienced. You and I, we knew this long ago. We knew that Biden wasn't normal. I was talking about this before the 2020 election. I don't want to lay out down all the history again, but I do want to remind you that I knew that Biden was not mentally fit in 2020, and you did too. And they still didn't know in 2024. These people are sick. These people are absolute professional deceivers. Here's an article, as it's loading here, bear with me. Article, CNN, Jake Tapper says White House lied to cover Biden's decline, but he forgets he helped. Yes, he did help. This is at lifezet.com. CNN anchor Jake Tapper stated on Tuesday that officials inside the White House deliberately concealed the extent of Joe Biden's physical and cognitive decline, including reports that he may have needed a wheelchair if he had fallen again. Who could not have seen? These idiots. It's not idiot. You know what they are? They are sophists. They are professional deceivers. That's what they are. Now they're trying to profit off of dopes out here who are going to take this as though it's a serious sort of thing. These media officials knew. I knew. I never once sat down for an interview with Joseph Robinette bribery. I knew this. I saw him faceplant on the stage of the United States Air Force Academy after giving, the commencement address. I saw him fall over somehow. I'm still not certain how he pulled this one off. He was coming to a stop on his bicycle, had his little helmet on and everything else to stop to talk to reporters. He had one foot on the ground, kind of cruising to a stop, and he toppled over. All he had to do was put his other foot on the ground. He was straddling a bicycle, toppled over like a 2-year-old trying to learn to ride a bike. He fell down going up the stairs of Air Force One countless times. That's the physical. I watched him shuffle when they would have him, direct him around. They had to put X's. They had to point, Mr. President, stand right there. They had to give him pieces of paper with pictures of journalists who to call on at the press conference. There is no way. There is no way. Jake Tapper, you are either lying to the American people or you suck at your job so bad, you should never be tasked with the responsibility of delivering the news to people again. Because this is absolutely moronic. I'm not buying it. The people in this audience aren't buying it. And the people with brains in this country aren't buying it either. You got a book to peddle, and it is beyond reprehensible to me that these folks are more intent, more focused on profiting from a story that they could have told you in the news media prior to the 2024 election, but they didn't want that. They wanted Joseph Robinette Bribery to be president. That's what they wanted. When he dropped out of the race, and after Kamala lost the election, now that we're out of that season, now that we're on to the Democrat Party moving on or trying to pick up the pieces, find their new leader, find whatever policies and positions that they find to be important. They're lost. They're rudderless. They don't have a leader, a message. They've got nothing. But now that we're at that part of the story, that part of the narrative, we don't have to worry about criticizing Biden. Now you can sell your stupid book. And I got to tell you, I hope it sells 0 copies. I hope that it sells 0 copies. Of course, it'll sell some copies. I hope no one in this audience buys this stupid book. They want to charge you to tell you stuff that they could have told you all along. Now, someone's put together, this is Tom Elliott. He's, Grabian News. He's the founder, I think, of Grabian News. He's put together, I guess he's tweeted this, a montage of clips of Jake Tapper before the election with guests on his program basically denying that anything's wrong with Joseph Robinette Bribery. I want you to listen to this.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You have no app. I can't. This is so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
and try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
President Biden embraces his stutter, talking about it, while Trump mocks it, exaggerates it, belittles it. He's sharp physically. I mean, mentally.
Yeah.
I think the question is physically, right?
Right.
More so?
Right.
This is Jake Tapper. He's sharp. He's talking about Biden. He's sharp mentally. He's just not sharp physically. This guy's like, oh, yeah, that's right. Give me a
chief
break.
Opponent is only 3 or 4 years younger than him.
Exactly.
I mean, you have questioned President Biden's age, mental fitness, ability to lead. Of those supporting Biden, you said, quote, shame on all of you pretending everything is okay. You're
That's
leading
right.
us and him into a disaster. Do you worry that you damaged him at all? I don't doubt that you got hugs and handshakes behind closed doors today, and maybe even publicly, some of them because they like you personally. But I've heard a lot of really nasty stuff about you from your Democratic colleagues. Sure. I mean, just like, what is he thinking? Exercise in narcissism. I mean, false claims to the Wall Street Journal about President Biden's mental fitness and acuity. He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible, but I don't understand the outrage. Quote, behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping, unquote. The Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs. Beyond the headline, there is some critical nuance here. The article is mostly based on observations of Republicans, with former Speaker Kevin McCarthy the only one going on the record. They do note in the article that most of the criticism comes from Republicans. Have you heard any concerns from anyone who has met with President Biden about him seeming a little slower?
No.
The Russians are trying to make us and the public not trust our election integrity. Joe Biden has dementia, all this stuff.
There we go. Russian collusion. Now he's got his book out. Don't buy this stupid book. This guy's a professional deceiver and an absolute hack. I've got to take a break, my friends. Quick timeout. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Jake Tapper better be thankful that we're conservative, not bitter here. But we're not afraid to say what we think. This guy is a 100%, in my opinion, a 100% hack. That was a montage, again, put together by Grabian News founder Tom Elliott. He tweeted that out he tweeted that out back at the end of February when news of this stupid book. What's this book called? Let me back this up so I can see the full cover. It's called Original Sin. President Biden's Decline It's cover up and his disastrous choice to run again. That's the name of this book. I just played for you this montage put together by Grabian Tom Elliott here, Grabian News Tom Elliott, of countless times before the election of how Tapper wouldn't even hear. Laura Trump was the first soundbite. He wouldn't even hear what she had to say about Biden's... No, that's Republican talking points. No, that's Russian propaganda. No, there's no sign of any deterioration. Then he said if there was deterioration, it was just physical. He's 81 years old. 81 years old. And then he had to throw in that's 3 years older than Trump. They're the same, basically the same. Or anyone with eyes and a brain watching these two men function, do you think Biden is the same as Trump? You've got to be kidding me. I can't take you seriously if you say yes. You can believe in Biden's politics if you want. You can be a Democrat through and through if you want. It's crazy. I don't know why you would do that. But to tell me that Joseph Biden and his cognitive ability, his mental acuity is on par with Trump's it's ridiculous. It is absurd. It should get you laughed out of being able to have a single person even take one word you say seriously. Now this professional deceiver, Jake Tapper here, wants us to believe that he had no idea. But now he's got the book written. The election was in November. I guess Biden dropped out end of July, say beginning of August. So September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. 9 months ago. 9 months ago, Jake Tapper was telling us how sharp Biden was mentally. Now he's got a book talking about, the original sin here of the Biden campaign. Biden's decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again. Jake, you were part of the cover-up. Jake, I think you're an absolute hack. If I'm ever on Jake Tapper, if I ever get invited, which I don't say that I want to, but if I do, and if I go on there, Jake, I want you to play this soundbite when you introduce me. Let's get right to what we really think about one another, because this is absolutely 100% deception on your part. You're an absolute hack. How people listen to this dude I listen to him for the sake of telling you what they're trying to deceive people about, to sometimes get a laugh about some of the stupid things that are said on his program, his network, and everything else. But to literally listen to this guy as though he can be trusted. This guy has zero trust factor. This guy is no better than Brian Williams making up stories of getting shot at in the helicopter. I can't. These people, it's remarkable to me. I think I can't even believe this. The more I think about this, the more absolutely unbelievable this is. I think about things in terms of how I would react. It's easy when people are in the spotlight. It's kind of like they're disconnected. It's easy to view them as not being, it's not a real person and all that. I really try to humanize this. And I think if I encountered Jake Tapper in my life, whether he worked at my business, if he was a customer, if he was in Little League sports with me, and this dude we know how he would behave. He would be lying about something. And I think I wouldn't have anything to do with this guy. I wouldn't vote for this guy. If he ran to be on the youth soccer board and I could stop it, I would stop it. This guy would have literally nothing. He would have no authority or power so far as it was up to me. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it just makes no difference. If he's raising money to build a dog park in the community, I wouldn't give him a penny. This guy has no trust. He's completely untrustworthy. He's a hack, in my opinion, clearly. Evidence coming out the ears here. And yet people listen to this clown. And he's not the worst one. He's one that's trying to act like he's, the most serious. He's a serious hack, in my opinion. Anyway, got to wrap up here, friends. Let me tell you, though, really quickly, at the conclusion here, before we get too much further and get into the music, we need you around. We need to fight. We need you in this fight to keep people like Jake Tapper, to keep people from following that line of politics and this insanity. So I need you healthy. This nation needs you healthy. One way you can do that is by taking care of your heart. And you can do that by going to Soltea.com, SOLTEA. Promo code Todd gets you 50% off your first 3-month supply and free shipping. I take the product. I think you should think about it as well. Soltea.com, SOLTEA, promo code Todd. Friends, this Jake Tapper guy, I tell you what, the more I think about this guy may be as bad as they get. He should not be taken seriously. I gotta go. Have a great day, SDG.